Yeah, hi. Thank you, Nicholas. Thank you so much for the introduction. Once again, warm welcome and thank you to all the attendees who have joined the webinar today. So, without any further notice, I'll start the session. All right, and we'll have some questions to discuss towards the end as well. So, as Nicholas was saying, so today's session is all about how businesses can streamline the business travel and how they can have better cost control on the employees' business expenses, right? So, when we take any business, travel and employee reimbursement play a vital role. And so we'll see the different methods and different options that we have in Zoho Expense to automate the process and also provide a good experience for your employees so that they don't have to spend much time in uh, submitting their expense reimbursements. All right. So before we go into the session, let me quickly take you through to the agenda for today's presentation. So first, I'd be sharing the importance of travel and expense management sector, why it needs your attention, and the role that HR team has in improving the organization's productivity and efficiency by streamlining and automating this process. And of course, the challenges or the day-to-day challenges that businesses usually face in the traditional method of tracking the employee expenses. And finally, I'll be introducing Zoho Expense. What is Zoho Expense and the features that we have in Zoho Expense, and what are the key benefits that we offer in this current market. And towards the end, we can discuss your questions as well. All right. So I like to start this session with a statistic data from a recent study that has been done by Aberdeen Research. So it says that travel expenses nearly comprises around 8 to 12% of an organization's total budget. Now, at hindsight, 8 to 12 might sound pretty less, but it nearly comprises around 1/10 of an organization's overall budget. And also, travel expenses usually are the second highest expenses in almost all the firms. Of course, payroll expenses always sits at the top, and travel expenses comes right behind it, right? So when we are spending so much money in one particular segment, and uh, we should definitely find different ways to streamline it, and we should also make sure that there are no overspending that happens on this particular segment, because you're already spending a lot more, and there's a lot going into it, right? So this is where, as HR personnel, you can have a major impact in streamlining this process. So whenever we take any business, right, be it small or medium or enterprise business, they will have their own set of policies and compliances which the employees need to adhere to, right? And it is the role of the HR team or the HR department in ensuring that all the employees are compliant with the company's policies, and they know the policy that the company has in place, and they also need to ensure that the employees are not violating the policies, right? Now, when we talk about travel and expense management uh, section, companies have their own set of policies for employees business travel and expense reimbursements, right? Again, this is one kind of policy, and again, the HR team needs to ensure that they have a well defined policy at first place. And uh, creating a policy is one thing, but they also need to ensure that the policy is visible to the employees, and also they should then make sure that the employees do not uh, violate the policies, and all their expenses are in compliant with the company's policy, right? So and businesses usually uh, follow the traditional way of doing their expenses. Whenever I talk to people, or I talk to some business finance team in a business, right, they always tell me the first reply I hear from them is, hey Bharat, I can always do this in a spreadsheet or through emails, and I can still achieve the end result. Well, you can still do it manually, that is the traditional process, but that the journey that they take to achieve the end result in the traditional method is lot more time consuming, and it is so tiring for their employees. And trust me, in my previous company, they used to follow a manual reimbursement process. And when you do the traditional way, right, every time I come back from a business trip, first and foremost, I need to have a copy of all my receipts with me. And especially if the trip is for 10 or 15 days, I'd be having a lot of receipts. And I'm someone who's very bad at, storing all the receipts with me. I usually lose out on a couple of receipts, and which in turn, result in me losing a lot of money on, because the company will not reimburse me without the receipts. And not only that, every time I come back from a business trip, I have to fill in a lot of columns in an Excel file, and then I have to submit it to my finance team for reimbursement. And we are all humans. We are tend to make mistakes. There are a lot of errors that might come up when you're manually filling out an Excel file with all your expense details. And from a finance standpoint, imagine they have to, every time when they have to process a reimbursement cycle, they have to process a bunch of receipts. And it takes a lot of productive hours of them, and it really affects their morale as well. And some companies have a legacy ERP solution where expense is a portion of it. So they don't really focus primarily on expense management. Rather they have, a module which covers expense as well. Now the problem with those solution is that you don't have a lot of flexibility to play around with employee expense management, and you don't have a lot of integrated options. And the UI would be so complex because they would have a lot of other features and other verticals in it which you might not need, and the UI would be really difficult. And the employees will really have to spend a lot of time in understanding the UI and getting used to the product, right? So this is where we would stress you all, like a legacy system might be good enough, but you don't need to be good enough when you can easily switch to one of the best expense management solutions out there, which is Zoho Expense, right? So Zoho Expense is our online travel and expense reporting software, which is tailor made for businesses to streamline and automate the process of expense creation, submission, and helps the finance team to process the reimbursements at a really faster rate, right? Now, let's have a quick overview on the features that is offered by Zoho Expense. So in Zoho Expense, it caters to the complete travel and expense management lifecycle of an employee, right from their travel booking and recording their expenses in the application, and from a finance standpoint, defining the policies, enforcing the policies, and we also have specific modules to connect the corporate cards and raise a purchase request or a purchase indent as well. Now, when we talk about travel booking, so every company is built different, right? So there are companies who allow the employees to book their flights and hotels with their own personal cards, and then the company will reimburse them for the air tickets and hotel reservations. And there are companies who have a dedicated travel desk team who will book the flights for them. Now, first we'll cover the online travel booking part, right? And here, even if the employee is allowed to book flights and hotels on their own, it doesn't mean like everyone can travel in a business class, right? So say for example, imagine someone from a sales team who just joined the company, and there is someone who's been part of the company for the past many years, let's say a CFO. So the CFO would be allowed to travel in business class, but the sales representative might be allowed to travel only in economy or premium economy, right? So for online travel booking, we are integrated with a travel management a travel partner called Get There. So using this option, you can define your policies, and the employees can book hotels and flights by themselves, right? So when they log into Zoho Expense, they can book their flight tickets by themselves. And when they try to create a new travel request, we automatically load GetThas website. They can enter the itinerary, and then they can book the required flights and hotels. And you can define the policies. You can incorporate the policies over here. So when a sales representative tries to book a flight, only the flights and hotels that are applicable as per his policy would be displayed over here. And you don't need to worry about the employee overspending on his flights and hotels, right? And now imagine the traditional way of doing this. You have to first send out an email to your manager if you want to go for a business trip, and then they have to approve it, and you have to then forward it to a travel team to ask book the flight ticket. So it's a manual work, a lot of time consuming process as well. So online travel booking really uh, uh, eliminates all these manual work that is involved in travel booking. Now, if your company has offline travel booking, wherein you have a separate travel team or a travel desk team who is in charge of booking all the flights and hotels for your employees, then you can use Zoho Expenses offline travel booking platform. So we have a travel requisition form wherein users can enter the complete itinerary, the travel dates, and the location, and they can submit it to their manager. So once the manager approves, it will be forwarded to the travel desk team, and the travel desk team will have a separate dashboard where they can view all their or they will have a bird's eye view of all the travel requests that is ongoing in the company's in their company, right? So they can see the pending trips and the trips for which flights and hotels are yet to be booked, and any cancellation that is involved or any rescheduling that is going to take place. They'll have an overview of all the travel that is going on in the company, and the upcoming travel or the upcoming request for which they need to book of flights and hotels as well. All right, so this will really provide them with more insights on the real-time basis and ensure that the flights and hotels are booked without any further delay, because flight tickets are tend to increase as we speak by, right? So with this automated solution, the travel team can book the flights and hotels with ease and without any delay, which in turn would result in saving a lot of cost that you need to spend on, booking the flight tickets at the last minute. And so from now on, it's going to be like basically like a story, or right. So imagine you have your flight tickets booked, travel request has been processed, you go on a business trip. Now, of course, during the trip, you would be incurring a lot of expenses, right? So how can you record those expenses in the application? So in Zoho Expense, we have a receipt auto scan function inbuilt. So that is we have an OCR engine which would automatically scan the receipt and it will convert them as an expense. So whenever you incur an expense, let's say you have a coffee at a restaurant, as soon as you pay for the coffee bill, you will have the receipt with you, right? You can just take your mobile phone, take a picture of the receipt and upload it into the application. So Zoho Expense automatically scans the receipt. It also fetches the details out of the receipt, like the date, amount, currency, uh, merchant, and it will convert it into an expense. So we support receipt auto scan in more than 15 languages, and the application is supported in the mobile devices as well. So you can just take a picture, and the rest would be taken care by the application. And you can also forward receipts via email. So we have a unique receipt forwarding email address. So let's say you make a purchase online, right, from Amazon or eBay, the receipts would be sent to your email address. You can forward them to Zoho. We provide each user with a unique receipt forwarding email address. And again, the application automatically scans it and converts it into an expense. So you don't need to fill in any form manually. You can just take a picture, send the receipt to Zoho Expense. The rest of the process will be taken care by the application itself. And let's say if your company is issuing corporate cards to your employees, and employees would be using their corporate cards for incurring their expenses. So we have a direct integration with three of the major card service providers, that is American Express, Visa, and MasterCard. So with this integration, as soon as you incur any expenses on your card, and once the transactions get posted in your bank website, it would be automatically fetched into Zoho Expense. So users don't need to manually import their bank statement. The transactions would flow into Zoho Expense automatically. This will again eliminate the pain that the employee has to undergo to manually reconcile their credit card statement, right? Because all these statements would be fetched into Zoho Expense automatically, and it would be also sitting under the expenses module for them. So all they need to do is categorize the expenses, send it to the finance team for approval, right? And we also have the option to automate the mileage reimbursement as well. So if your business would be reimbursing your employees for the number of miles or kilometers that they travel, uh, you can define the mileage rate in the application, the per kilometer or the rate per mile, and the employees can record the mileage expenses pretty easily. So we have an inbuilt GPS feature in the mobile application. So before starting the travel, the employee can turn on the GPS, and once the destination is reached, the GPS can be turned off. All right. So the distance between start and stop would be automatically captured, and eventually a mileage expense would be recorded. And uh, once you have recorded all these expenses, right, the next step is you need to submit them for approval. Now let me quickly brief you on the entire automation that runs in the background from expense creation to expense submission. So it's just a recap of the last three slides, right? So imagine I go for a business trip. I have a coffee at Starbucks using my credit card. I swipe the card, pay for the expense. I receive my receipt from the company or from the restaurant, and I take a photo from my mobile phone. I upload the receipt to Zoho Expense. What would Zoho Expense do? Zoho Expense scans the receipt and it would automatically create them as an expense. Now, in this case, I have connected my card in the application as well. Assumingly, the card transaction will also be fetched into Zoho Expense. I have also uploaded a receipt for the same in Zoho Expense. So the card transaction and the receipt would be matched automatically. The reconciliation is done. If the expense was incurred from my own money, then once the auto scan is completed, the application automatically creates it as an expense, right? And then it will check if all the policies are compliant, right? So that is, the expense is compliant with all the policies that the company has in place. And then finally, it automatically creates an expense report. So a report is nothing but a folder which can contain all your expenses, and you can also define a schedule a date in which the reports needs to be submitted for reimbursement. So on the defined date, the report gets automatically generated. All the expenses would be added to that report, and the report gets submitted into the application automatically. So your employees need not do anything. All they need to do is swipe the card, take a photo of the receipt, upload it, and the rest of the process would be automatically taken care by the application. Right? It's very simple. They don't need to do or sit and spend a lot of time in doing this process. The entire process from A to Z would be automatically taken care by the application with the strong automations that we have in place, right? So now once the employee has submitted the expenses, every company will have different sets of approval hierarchy, right? So when an employee submits a business reimbursement, it will usually go through multiple layers of approval before it reaches to the finance team for reimbursement. So in Zoho Expense, we have a strong approval engine, right, using which you can define the approval hierarchy. We can have multiple levels of approval, and we can also have some criteria based approvals as well. So let's say if an expense is greater than a defined amount, if it's greater than $10,000, if the report total is greater than $10,000, you can also route the expense report to the CEO or CFO before it reaches the finance team. So whatever complex approval hierarchy you have, we can easily incorporate them into the application. Okay. Now, when we talk about an executive in a company, like the CEO or CFO, they might not have enough time to spend in recording their expenses and submitting them for approval, right? So in Zoho Expense, we have a delegation feature wherein the CEO or CFO can, or any user can delegate their account to another employee, so that that employee can basically record and submit the expenses for on behalf of the user. And you don't need to share your login credentials, so you don't need to compromise on security. All right, the user can just switch to their account and record and submit the expenses on behalf of another employee. All right, and we also have recently introduced the purchase request module. Let's say for costly expenses, or for expenses that are very expensive, uh, companies will generally require a pre-approval, right? Let's say if you're going to buy something for your team, or if you're going to go for a team lunch or team dinner, you can make use of this module. So you can raise a purchase request, send it to your finance team for approval. Once it's approved, you can go ahead and then incur the actual expense and tag your expense against this purchase request. So imagine from a finance standpoint, if they see a sudden expense which is greater than 20,000 or $30,000, then they will have all sorts of question on who approved this, or why did they even incur this expense at first place. But if you already got a purchase request approved, and then if you tag it to the expense, the finance team will know that they already had this approved by the management, and they can still go ahead and reimburse them even though the expense amount is pretty huge, right? And uh, now, that being said, we saw all the modules that the employees can make use of to report their expenses, right? So now once the expense is submitted, it's very important that uh, all the expenses or each and every line item is compliant with your company's policy, right? So this way the finance team can ensure they're not overspending on employees reimbursements. So now let's see how Zoho Expense helps businesses in having a better cost control on the employees expenses. So we have multiple options to enforce your policies. So the first thing is you can define limits for each expense category, right? So every company will have their own limits and policies. So some companies will have different limits for different designation and different limits for different departments, right? So in Zoho Expense, you can define multiple policies or you can create multiple policies. And within each policy, you can define the limits for the categories so that when the employees exceed the limit, the approvers can instantly be notified as well. And using our automated per diem rates, you can define a per diem allowance for each and every location. So companies will have different sets of per diem rates based on the different countries or different cities that the employee is traveling to, right? So you can easily incorporate your per diem rates in the application. So when an employee, tries to create a per diem expense, the allowance rate would be automatically populated for them. And you can also define expense rules in the application. So let's say you can define daily, monthly, or even yearly limit for your employees. So let's say you have a monthly limit where employees are allowed to claim internet expenses for $200, right? And if they are exceeding it, you can automatically block them or warn them from submitting those expenses. And whenever any expense violates the policy, the application display the policy violation alerts. So these alerts would be displayed to the approvers and the finance team as well. So based on the alerts, they can decide if they want to approve the expense or reject the expense. And sometimes the expenses might still be compliant with the company's policy, but what if they are duplicates, right? So let's say I forgot and I forgot that I uploaded the same expense or the same receipt twice into the application, but at the end of the day, it's a duplicate expense, right? So companies needs to be aware that they are not reimbursing the same expense twice. So in Zoho Expense, we have a default duplicate detection feature, which would automatically detects two expenses as potential duplicates if both expenses have the same date, amount, and currency, right? And this way, the approvers or the employee can also rectify or remove the duplicate, and then they can go ahead and submit the expense for approval. And we also have a strong audit engine to ensure the authenticity of each and every expense line item. This way, you can prevent submission of any fraudulent expenses. So, some good examples or classic examples that I can give you is, let's say, I upload a receipt for auto scan, right? The application reads the value of the receipt as $100. If I manually edit the amount and if I, let's say, put it as $120, and if I submit it for approval, the application automatically identifies it and it informs the approver, or it will display an alert that the user has changed the expense total from $100 to $120. Or let's say your employees would be traveling globally to multiple countries, and and if they try to edit the exchange rate, right? So we have an automated exchange rate system in place, and if they try to edit the exchange rate, provide a higher exchange rate, which would in turn increase their expense amount, then the system will automatically identifies it and flags it and displays it for the approvers and the finance team. So this way, you can ensure each and every expense line item is not modified or is not a fraudulent one, right? And another good thing about this is these audits will not be displayed to the employees. It would they don't even know that they have such audits in place. Only the approvers and the managers would be aware of it, and they can take a call if they want to approve the expense or reject the expense. All right. And apart from these policies and rules and audits, Zoho Expense, being an off-the-shelf product, can easily fit into any business's ecosystem. We have a lots and lots of customizations that we offer. So starting with custom roles and permission. So we have three predefined roles as submitter, approver, and admin. So submitters would be submitting the expenses, approvers approving it, and admin team has the overall access to the application. Now, if you want to add a travel desk department or a finance team, we can also add custom roles where you can provide specific modules or specific access to specific modules to them, so that they don't see the overall picture in the application, but they can only access the modules which are given to them. And Zoho Expense can also be extended, and many out of the box requirements can be met using page layouts. So, based on each category that the employee is selecting for their expense, you can have the expense form customized. So, let's say if it's a mileage expense, and if you for mileage expenses alone, if you want employees to add the destination address or the client name, we can define a page layout such that when an employee picks as some creates a mileage expense, for that expense alone we can have few fields populating up such that a client location or client address. So for the meals expense or travel expense, those kind of fields would not be displayed. And you can also write your custom functions, a deluge script in the application, so that whenever any report is submitted, and automation would be running in the background, and uh, it will be achieving the end result that you have written in the custom function. All right. And as I was saying earlier, expense reports can be automated. So you can define a specific date or on a specific day when you want the expenses to be automatically generated. And on that day, the expense gets generated, all the unreported expenses gets added in that report, and the report would also be automatically submitted to the management for approval, right? And we also can define workflow rules in the application. So let's say whenever any criteria is satisfied, you can trigger email notifications or in-app notifications to a group of people. So let's say you have within travel desk, you have a separate team for domestic bookings and a separate team for international bookings, right? If an international request is approved, we can trigger emails to the required set of team members who takes care of international travel requests. Or let's say whenever any expense report is approved by the final approver, we can send an email to the finance team, or trigger an email to the finance team asking them to process the reimbursement cycle. So uh, uh, using workflow rules, you can trigger these emails based on whatever criteria that you have set up in the application. And so, now these are the benefits that you get of using Zoho Expense. So, of course, whatever, however complex your travel and expense management policies and approval hierarchy is there, you can easily automate them using Zoho Expense. So, first and foremost, your employees will have a greater user experience, right? Because all they need to do is upload the receipts and swipe their card, and the rest of the process will be taken care by the application. And you can define your policy, uh, uh, embed the policy in Zoho Expense, ensure the visibility of those policies to your users, so you can ensure all the expenses are compliant with the policy. And the finance team can get real-time data of the expenses happening in the company. And all these combined will really ensure that the finance team does their reimbursements at a faster rate, and none of the reimbursements are delayed, right? And Zoho Expense is available in a wide range of platforms. You can, of course, uh, do it in the web application from a computer or laptop, but Zoho Expense is also supported in Android and iOS platforms as well. And we also have the application in Apple Watches. So wherein using the GPS feature that I was talking about earlier, right? Users can record the distance traveled from their iWatch itself, Apple Watch itself, and they can submit the mileage expense for approval. Now, when we talk about Zoho ecosystem, so these are some of the applications that directly integrates with Zoho Expense. So, of course, we can always talk about Zoho Books, which is the accounting solution, and we can automatically, once an expense is approved, it gets pushed to Zoho Books, and we can fetch the employee uh, master information with the departments, their reporting manager, employee number from Zoho People automatically, and all the customer database can be fetched from Zoho CRM, and the projects can also be fetched from Zoho projects as well. Now, these are some of our travel partners. So we have a direct integration with Uber for Business. So if your company has a Uber business account, you can integrate it with Zoho Expense. And whenever employees are done with their ride, the ride details would be automatically fetched as an expense into Zoho Expense. And for online travel booking, we have an integration with Get There and JTB Business Travel. Now, Zoho Expense can be easily fit into your current ecosystem. So we have an integration with a wide range of applications, with be it the legacy ERPs like Oracle or SAP or NetSuite, or some of the other widgets like G Suite or a Slack integration as well. So you can take a closer look on the applications that directly integrates with Zoho Expense. And let's quickly hear from some of our customers, enterprise customers who are using Zoho Expense. So Red Doors has been using Zoho Expense for quite a few years now, and we implemented the application, and it's being used by more than 1,700 employees in their company, and it resulted in 70% of faster reimbursements being processed in their company, right? And we also have one of our very big customers, IFCO, right? So Zoho Expense is being implemented. Was implemented at IFCO in more than 25 countries. So they have presence all over the world, and we implemented it for more than 25 plus countries, and it's being used by more than 2,000 employees for more than 50 business units, and it has greatly improved them in having a better cost control on the employees' expenses. And these are some of our other customers, Puma and Scouts International. So they have also been using Zoho Expense, and it has greatly helped them in streamlining the expense creation, submission, and providing a great user experience for the employees as well, right? And these are some of our other customers who have been using Zoho Expense, some of our other enterprise customers. So we serve customers from all the region. All right, we are not confined to one particular region or to one particular location. So we have different editions available in Zoho Expense. We have different types of businesses, different types of customers who have been using Zoho Expense from all over the world. All right. So if you haven't if you haven't heard about Zoho Expense previously, it's not a problem. You can always reach out to us at sales@zohoexpense.com, so that we can understand your business requirements, and we can give you a personalized demo on the application, and we will help you and your company in migrating or implementing the software for your business, right? So that brings me to the end of my presentation. So once again, thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much for attending the session. And if you have any questions, please feel free to share it with me, and I'll answer them right away.